Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Another in our series of Meet the Elected Officials. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you see our series every couple of years anyway. Meet the candidates, an opportunity for all of the candidates for their respective positions to come on and through this show for you to at least virtually meet them in that way for you to become an educated, informed voter. This series concentrates, on the other hand, on those already in office. Again, if you're a regular viewer of the show, you have seen everybody from our county manager to the sheriff to county commissioners, school board members, and in the case recently, candidates for the governor's job here in Florida. Our guest today is Tracy Andrews, recently elected to Ward 3 City Councilperson position in Chipley, Florida. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tracy, as we did prior to the election, about going forward, what her thoughts are, what she's already learned perhaps, and going forward, what will be her plans to do many of the things that she talked about in the election. We hope that if you are an elected official, eventually you'll come on the show. Many have been invited, some have downright declined, and in many cases maybe they should. We're not going to call you out by name, but we're not going to stop inviting you either. So hopefully when we come back, we're going to talk to Tracy Andrews about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Tracy Andrews. Congratulations. Last time we spoke, you were on actually for your second appearance during the campaign. You were weary from that campaign trail, had learned a lot at that point. But since that time, the election has happened. You won by 6 votes. How strong is that? I can't help but thinking, if you lose a campaign by 1,000 votes, you say, I gave it my best shot. But when you lose by 6, you have to say, what fish fry could I have gone to? What meeting did I miss that would have made the difference? But first of all, thank you for being here today, and congratulations.
Thank you. My pleasure, sir, for being here.
Are you overwhelmed yet?
I feel numb, so to speak, but I was so excited, even with the 6-vote win. I'm encouraged. There's still more that I could have done. I was thinking about that as I began to wind down that night. What more could I have done? But there's work still to be done, and I'm excited about it and ready to move forward.
And I guess perhaps Chipley, Florida experiences this every election cycle, but there was a pitiful turnout at the polls. When we say you won by 6 votes, that kind of paints one picture, but when we realize how many votes were cast total?
From roughly under 400.
Yeah. So, and how many registered voters in the city of Chipley?
At least 2,200 registered voters.
Yeah. So you got 15% more or less of the people coming out to vote, and then it's easy to say, well, Tracy, you know, half the people don't want you as in that position. Well, half the people who voted don't want you in that position, and half of them do. But at the end of the day, that is not representative of the entire city. Let's start at the beginning. Chipley, Florida is the county seat of the county of Washington, in which we find ourselves. Chipley is also, in my perspective, in the transportation center, is sort of the transportation hub of Northwest Florida. We have Highway 79 and 77, both of them currently being 4-laned. We have I-10, which passes just south of the city. We have Highway 90, which passes the Old Spanish Trail, which passes right through the city. We have a railroad spur, the CSX Railroad, which passes right through our city. We have a deepwater port in Panama City just to our south, and we are only 30, 40 minutes from the Alabama state line. It puts us in a position, an enviable position, when people who live here can travel very easily 60 to 90 minutes in any direction and be in some of the major cities in Northwest Florida, whether it's Tallahassee, Pensacola, to our south, the world's most beautiful beaches, or even Dothan, Alabama, and points north. The opportunities for education, for employment, and for commerce are just huge and enhanced by that road system. Right now, Chipley has very few unpaved roads. They have a good water system. They have a good waste disposal system. They've got garbage pickup. Their taxes, however, are the highest of any municipality around. To what do we attribute that? you have any idea?
Understanding that we do have the largest tax base, I'm not sure the ins and outs of why that is so here in Chipley, but that is one of the things that I want to jump in and determine and find out. And hopefully we can change that or turn that around.
Yeah, I don't know that that in and of itself is going to cause huge issues when it comes to doing business going forward, but that is something that people remark on a lot. You know, for the last 10 or 12 years, and I've been an outspoken a person about this, we have seen negligible economic development in Washington County. City of Chipley being that county seat certainly doesn't necessarily control a lot of that, but certainly do work very closely with that sitting Board of County Commissioners. The upside, I would imagine, as a newly elected city commissioner is that you are going to be able to work not only with that sitting Board of County Commissioners, but also our relatively newly elected county commission. And you've got some dynamic business people on that board, newly hired county manager. Your thoughts have got to be positive going forward.
Most definite, and I believe that we have a great team to work with, and I believe that they'll be very receptive of me being the new person that's in. And let's look at this, the bigger picture of Washington County and Chipley as a whole.
Not that we necessarily want to dwell on the point, but you are the first African-American woman to be elected to the Chipley City Council. Is that correct?
Most definitely, and two, that's not my biggest focus. I'm always stuck on the fact of the most qualified person for that, the person who has the heart and passion for serving in that capacity. So didn't go in with race or color in mind. It's about being able to do a job, to be able to serve my community.
We have some opportunities, issues, and subjects for discussion going forward in the city of Chipley. I'm not going to hit you with any hard topics. As we mentioned during the campaign, you as a candidate, you as a newly elected official, certainly can't address most of those until you get in that seat, which brings up an interesting point. You were elected on August 1st, but you don't take seat until the first meeting in October, which is October 10th.
That is correct.
So that's a very long period of time. That's, what, 9 weeks? Why is there that lame duck period of time? Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure, but that's definitely a question or concern of mine because I am very excited. I don't believe it would take very long for me to transition and to jump in and start working. So not sure why that length of time is in place, but I know there's terms, and I know the elections are held prior to the term ending. Maybe there's some things that they're having to transition me into and transition that person from that position.
I know in the case of some constitutional offices, for instance, in Florida, the sheriff's race, that election always on that first Tuesday in November, but they are not sworn in until January.
That's right.
So again, there's that period of time. In the case of that position, there are actually, there's legislation in place that says that the outgoing sheriff cannot spend certain monies and can only spend up to a certain amount of certain monies to make sure that we don't have somebody that gets defeated and then does something to hurt the county. Right. To the best of your knowledge, is there something like that in place in the city government?
Not sure, but those are some questions that I'll ask just to make sure that I'm more familiar with the process and see if there's some room for improvement.
The gentleman that you defeated also happened to hold the position of mayor. The city positions of council people for the 4 wards and the at-large are not single-member districts. So everybody in the city votes for each of those positions, which to me is a great thing.
Right.
That single-member district opened up a lot of issues, and it made for people being loyal to their district and doing things sometimes at the expense of other areas in that broader area for their district. So the single-member district thing, or not having a single-member district voting, is great. Now, the city of Chipley, much like other cities, is split up into 4 wards, and there's a representative for each of those wards. You were elected as representative of Ward 3, and then there's an at-large position. So you and Tommy Sasser, or actually Tommy Sasser was up for re-election last time. He didn't have an opponent, so you and he will be sworn in as the incoming representatives. And then Karen Rustin, Brett Butler, and Ellis Reed, who is the at-large representative, will then run in the next cycle. And that's a 4-year term, and every 2 years you elect the 2 and then the 3, just much like the school board or the county commission.
That's correct.
Okay. What are your thoughts going forward? Do you have a lot of work to do? I know you got a lot of catching up, learning what's going on and finding out the answers to some of the tough questions. Have you had a lot of questions asked of you during the campaign and since your election? And so now you have a list that you have to go in, and maybe at your first meeting or hopefully before, you can start finding out this information?
Well, I don't have a long list, but of course, several citizens was concerned about the downtown area and also just recreational things here, was concerned about, having more here as far as businesses and those things. So there's a lot of things that's on the table that we need to discuss. I think I'm just going to be in the more learning mode, and the more I learn, the more I'll be able to better answer the questions for the citizens or take the information back. But I'm definitely ready to get started in a more greater way.
Yeah. CRA, we talked about the Community Redevelopment Authority when you were in your campaign mode. I saw recently that they were talking about a large illuminated electronic sign in the middle of Chipley at 77 and Highway 90, and they talked about presenting it to the City Council at one of the next meetings. I would like to think that since we have a lame duck mayor, and who's also the person who is in the position for which you've been elected, that they would put that off until you, as the incoming representative, would be in place. Do you have any knowledge of that at all?
No knowledge of that.
Okay.
That was not brought up either at our last workshop.
Okay. Well, during my period as chairman of the Tourist Development Council here in Washington County, it was actually brought up to have a lighted sign in that place where they were going to build a park where the old water tank used to be. Matter of fact, we've got video and photo documentation. When they took it down, we actually shot that entire sequence. They started in the late afternoon, and as night came, the sparks flying off of the tower was just pretty dramatic. But they're talking about making that into a city park where the old ice house was, where the Historical Society used to be, and with that electronic lighted sign. I, for one, am totally against it, to be honest with you. We talked from the tourist development point of view of putting that sign there, where in reality it needs to be out by the interstate, inviting people to whatever events are coming on, or to downtown Chipley. I also understand that CRA monies can't be spent on anything outside the CRA itself, so it would have to be somewhere in there. I'd really have to question if $50,000 or more wouldn't be better spent on something other than a sign. But again, one of those things that you're probably going to have to be privy to once you do take that chair at the dais. Have you had lots of people calling and saying, "Hey, when you're elected or when you're in office, here's what I need"? Have you already got people making requests or calling you for stuff like that?
No calls, not yet. I'm sure I do anticipate some calls, but as of now, not many calls at all.
Going forward, what do you see as some of the issues that maybe face Chipley, big or small? Sometimes people put a magnifying glass on little things. I know for a while the splash pad was a point of contention. It's kind of died down a little bit. Every once in a while it kind of ebbs and flows. Well, and let's start there. What are your thoughts on the subject of splash pad?
Well, I think that's something that we need to look at a little closer and revisit. There's a couple of things that's in process right now. Even if we look at it and revisit it, there's a couple of things we've got to do before we can make ourselves eligible to even apply for grants to receive funding for that or any other projects. So I'm really big on pulling people within the community, volunteer committees, to get feedback from them. Many times we sit in these positions and say, "Oh, I think this is great for our city, this or that." And so we need to get some information from people within the city, a diverse group, that can give us some leads on some things that interest them, what they would like their city to look like, and then we take it in consideration and go from there. But definitely the downtown area is one main concern. Splash pads for our kids, any type of recreational facility for our children, I think would be great. So I just believe it's just time for us to get together. Let's talk about it. Let's answer those tough questions and see what we can do.
Your answer, which was inclusive of volunteers and input from the public, was not surprising. I know after your years of being involved with New Vision, that organization, totally volunteer-driven, doing lots of good things in the community, that by now, along with your church work and the other organizations, I know there's a bunch of them, a really good mindset to bring into that city position, I would think, because so often when you are spending somebody else's money, and that's all tax money at the end of the day, we can't lose sight of that. And also we can't lose sight of the fact that those people sitting at that day as work for us. You know, so often we cheer and clap and we say, hey, the governor decided to build a new courthouse here in Washington County, or, you know, our representative got us $1 million toward the Highway 79 project. Well, all they're really doing is returning money that we put into their coffers. And I can't say it strongly enough that shame on us when we let the tail wag the dog, all too often we see that. So when you start talking about volunteerism, that's something we don't see or hear a lot from the mouths of elected officials. So high marks on that. I think you're going to bring a lot to the table.
I've benefited from being a volunteer. I started out with recreation with the city of Chipley and worked strongly for some things at Gilmore's Park. And so that input from someone that was from that community led to many things happening there at Gilmore's Park as well as Shoppers Park. So I think there's value and there's a benefit.
As in most of our programs or interviews, I ask all the questions. Is there anything that you would like to offer? Is there anything that you would like to say as that newly elected Ward 3 City Council person?
Well, I'm so excited. I am so excited about this opportunity. I'm ready to get started. I've already started preparing myself to be, to continue to be the voice for the people, but now in a more positive, greater way. I'm just ready to get to work. I am open, I'm available, I'm accessible. I love this community, and even though the numbers at Election Day was rather low, I'm still encouraged that we have work to do to encourage more of our citizens to get out and exercise your constitutional right to vote. And you want change, go be a part of the change, and voting helps determine that. So I'm excited. I want the citizens to know that I'm workable. I already know the people that's on the council, and I'm just ready to join a working team so that we can accomplish great things here in Chipley.
Sometimes it's be careful what you wish for, because I'm sure that there are going to be challenging moments. Having spent a little bit of time with you, I know that you're a very positive person, and instead of gnashing your teeth, wringing your hands and saying, what are we going to do, the first thing you do is talk to people. And I think that'll hold you in good stead going forward. Congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you.
Would like to perhaps reserve the option of having you come back on a regular basis. Keep us apprised. I think that the thrust of this show is to allow our viewers that, at least virtual, opportunity to hear your own words, and you being any of those elected officials. I think there's a disconnect sometimes. I think that there's many times that we only look at that person in that seat when it comes election time. Many times that's the only time they knock on your door, for sure. Many times it's the only time they really care about your input. That couldn't be any farther from the truth as far as what should be or what is right in our world. So hopefully you'll be back again to talk about that. And I got to tell you, I want to talk about race relations. I want to talk about the issues, the fundamental issues that face us as a community, whatever that community happens to be. We just happen to be sitting in Chipley in Washington County. Over time, I would very much like to discuss those things with you. There are things that I think are important to be able to discuss. And I think that, as they say with the sunshine law in Florida, sunshine is the best disinfectant. And shame on us if we don't at least do our part. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Our guest today has been Tracy Andrews, newly elected Ward 3 Chipley City Councilperson. Wow, it's a new day for Chipley, certainly. All kinds of benchmarks being set there. We look forward to seeing to seeing Tracy more as time goes on. We live, my own family lives in Chipley because we do so on purpose. We love Chipley, we love Northwest Florida, and again, all of the things that I say good about the county and the city are exactly those reasons that we are right here, that we run our business here, that we raise our family here. And if you're a viewer of this show, chances are you live somewhere close by and you have the same feelings. We'll be right back.